there's no on-off switch and there's no velocity switch we can turn down. We're using faster and faster computers to design and build faster and faster computers. We're using stronger and stronger AI to write code on its own for stronger and stronger AI. The notion that we're going to have AI that is fully human-like and then exceed human capabilities, I don't think is a matter of if, it's only a matter of when.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to AI and Your Life, the Essential Summit. I'm joined here. Well, I should say I'm Brian Keating, and I'm joined with my good friend and mentor and really big influential person in my life, Dr. Peter Diamandis, who was recently named one of the world's 50 greatest leaders by Fortune magazine. Peter's the founder and executive chairman of the X Prize Foundation, the executive founder and director of Singularity University, and co-founder of Bold Capital Partners, a venture fund with $250 million in investing in exponential technologies. Dr. Diamandis is also a best-selling author, New York Times bestselling author of two books, Abundance and Bold. I've got those here. He earned degrees in molecular genetics, aerospace engineering from MIT, and did his MD at Harvard Medical School. And Peter's favorite saying is, the best way to predict the future is to create it for yourself. Peter, it's always a treat to be with you. Thank you for joining us on this AI Summit.
Pleasure, my friend, a pleasure. And I was just saying when we're getting ready here, how much I enjoy my time speaking with you. So this is always a treat when you got two friends getting together and talking about the amazing world we're living in.
Yeah, well, we'll run out of time before we run out of topics. We've both hosted each other on each other's podcast. Peter's podcast is Moonshots and Mindsets, and it's really delightful. It's seen exponential growth of its own, so make sure you subscribe wherever fine podcasts are bought and sold. So let's get started. So I want to ask you, you are the person I look to, guru for many things, but lately there's so much information coming in on AI, and so much promise, so much hype, so much excitement. And I don't have time. I get 20 emails a week, as you do, probably even more. But the one I always read is yours, in addition to mine. But I read yours because you distill it, you concatenate, and you make sense of the world of the new developments in AI. So we talked a few months ago, but so much has changed. Where are we at right now with artificial intelligence?
Wow. So where we are is at a fascinating transition point, an inflection point. You know, one of the things I want to just put this into perspective, right? I think we might have talked about this before. The first time AI was really discussed was at a conference at Dartmouth in 1956. And so at that conference, some of the founding leaders in AI gathered. It wasn't a large group; it was a dozen or so. But the term artificial intelligence and the concepts around AI. And so that's just 70 years ago or so. Why has it taken so long to get to where we are today? We're finally in 2023, and I put that as the inflection point because everybody's speaking about it. ChatGPT was a user interface moment. I'll talk about that in a moment too. But why did it take so long? And it turns out there are really four reasons that have gotten to us to where we are today. The first is computational power, right? What's called the law of accelerating returns by our friend Ray Kurzweil, and Moore's law, which is integrated circuits. There's been an exponential growth. It's continued, doubling in power every 18 to 24 months, and it's just now, really in the last 5, 6, almost 7 years, that there's enough computational power you can throw at these deep neural networks to get them to operate. So computational power, and by the way, it's just exploding still. We're seeing massive GPU clouds. They're coming on, whether it's Tesla or Microsoft or Google, everybody. So computational power is not slowing down. In fact, on a log scale, if you graph it, it's curving upwards, right? Which tells you the rate at which it's accelerating is itself accelerating. The second thing is the amount of labeled data out there. And this is the internet. This is everything, every tweet, every Facebook post, every corporate web page, everything you ever put online. This labeled data is what these AI engines are crawling and learning from. They're learning from us. It's not like they're making it up, from zero. They're basically modeling us, and they're extrapolating and interpolating from the information we've given them. So the amount of data is doubling every 24 months. There's a new term for the amount of data. We're going to hit a yottabyte of data very soon. I love that term. And the third reason is that the models, how we're modeling AI, there's been a 99.5% improvement over 5 years. So for a dollar invested. So it's just getting cheaper and cheaper to create these models. And then the fourth reason, probably the most important one, is massive amount of money being invested, hundreds of billions of dollars. So all those things are just turning the volume to 11 on AI here. So that isn't slowing down, it's accelerating. But what happened to make it a topic on everybody's lips today? Well, these generative pre-trained transformers, GPT-3 and 4 by OpenAI, Bard, and what's coming from Google soon, Gemini. But what's interesting is there's been an inflection point, right? And that inflection point really, I give credit to Sam Altman and the team at OpenAI with ChatGPT. And what does that mean? So we had, as you well know, and you've spoken about, we had ARPANET, which was out there. And ARPANET was around, it connected all the universities. And it was really Mark Andreessen with Mosaic that put a user interface on top of very complicated equipment. And that user interface, Mosaic and then Netscape, allowed anyone to use this capability of TCP/IP and the internet protocol. And it made it easy for people to use. And the number of websites exploded over the few years to millions, and then tens of millions and hundreds of millions. Well, ChatGPT put a user interface on top of AI. And we went to 100 million users in 2 months' time. I think the important thing to realize is it's just one form of AI that's available, these generative pre-trained transformers. There are other ones coming. I was just hearing from a team out of MIT called Liquid AI that I'm going to bring to my stage at Abundance 360. And the numbers I saw, outperform ChatGPT in speed and context by orders of magnitude. And these are really based on modeling neuronal systems, like neurons of the brain. And so I think one of the important things to realize is there's no on-off switch, and there's no velocity switch we can turn down. We're using faster and faster computers to design and build faster and faster computers. We're using stronger and stronger AI to write code on its own for stronger and stronger AI. And so the notion that we're going to have AI that is fully human-like, we can describe what that is in a moment, and then exceed human capabilities, I don't think is a matter of if, it's only a matter of when. Probably the greatest predictor of this is someone that we both know, Ray Kurzweil. Ray is my co-founder at Singularity University. I'm on my board at X Prize, a dear friend. And in 1999, he predicted AI would achieve human-level intelligence by 2029. Right. So interestingly enough, everybody laughed at him back then. And where we are today is no one's laughing. In fact, the entire industry's predictions that used to be it's never going to happen, or it's going to be 100 years or 50 years, it's all converged on Ray's prediction of 2029. Even Elon recently said he agrees it's likely to be 2027, 28, 29, or thereabouts. And that idea of human level intelligence, where you can have a conversation with AI about anything, and man, are we so close right now just when we play with it. But guess what? The next year, it isn't human level, it's superhuman level, right? And we can talk about artificial superintelligence or digital superintelligence, but it's coming. And to quote the CEO, Sundar, the CEO of Google, it's going to be more impactful to humanity than electricity or fire. And I agree.
Wow, that's an astonishing statement. I hadn't heard that from Sundar. And I guess, this dovetails in nicely with the next statement, but also something you said a few minutes ago, which is, now we have AIs training AIs. And, if they can be great tutors and human level, when they become superhuman level, what are some of the concerns? You and I both remember this horrible affliction that afflicted bovines called mad cow disease. I've talked about the problem of AIs training AIs, which is only recently starting now with ChatGPT opened up, on searching the web with Bing, et cetera, recently with an update. I call it mad bot disease. What are you most concerned about?
Sure.
Are you? Yeah. So what are the most concerning factors and most exciting things, just on a personal level? You're a dad, you're a medical expert. What do you play around with? So first
Yeah.
concerns, then how are you having fun with it? How are you using it every day as a dad,
Sure.
as a man? Yep.
So let me start by saying that I have zero question AI is the single most important invention that humanity has ever come up with, right? Artificial intelligence is going to enable us in the scientific and medical world like nothing ever before. It is going to be more powerful than the microscope and the telescope, more powerful than the scientific theory. It will give us room temperature superconductors. It will give, if it's possible, it will give us fusion. It will give us the ability to design and improve life, to perhaps solve aging, right? Which is where I spend a lot of my time, is on the idea of aging is something that can be slowed, stopped, even reversed. So there is no putting AI back in the bottle. There may be opportunities to at least direct it where it goes and it flows. Having said that, AI is so important to humanity, and it's not going to be stopped. There's no on-off switch, right? I'm not worried about artificial intelligence. I'm worried about human stupidity, right? So let me parse 3 timeframes. The first time frame is right now, 2023 to first Q of 2024. And I think if AI stopped right here, right now, it'd be amazing. All upside, no downside, making us super productive, helping us all become better programmers and artists and writers and more productive than ever before. It would be awesome. But it's not going to stop. And it's not going to slow down. It's going to accelerate. I want to make that clear. It's accelerating, not even linear. So the next time frame is really mid 24 through 28 that I want to talk about. I'll call that the midterm. And my biggest concern is the impact it's going to have on the US elections. And it's going to be the ability for AI to cause a reinvention of disinformation, a reinvention of a truthful society. So if what you're watching, seeing, and hearing cannot be distinguished from what actually occurred, we're in trouble. So patient zero is likely to be a series of events that occur around the election, which create times of panic or distrust. And if you're defeating democracy, that's a really of great concern. When I'm talking about these problems, the next thing I say to all the entrepreneurs out there is solve them, right? The world's biggest problems, the world's biggest business opportunities. We have blockchain. There's going to be an ability to embed blockchain watermarks, or the case might be, for authentication. But it's still sometimes, unfortunately, what you see on TV, whether, people can show you something that looks realistic, like photorealistic, and say, this is fake, but your brain is still seeing it and you may still believe it. And therein lies some of the challenges and the issues. So we're going to see patient zero around the election. We're going to see AI being used for terrorist activities. What does that mean? Bringing down a power plant, bringing down a Wall Street server, just trying to cause havoc, right? There are enough malevolent individuals, and there's going to be an AI arms race between the white hats and the black hats. The only way to take on the dystopian use of AI is with AI. There's nothing else. And so there are a lot of companies being funded to do that. So that time frame between 2024 and 2028 is that period of angst and distrust and challenge. I think it's in the latter half of that. We're not really seeing the impact on jobs yet. I think we'll see a number of jobs being taken and transformed. But every place I see AI being used right now, it's enhancing people's abilities to do more with every minute of time they have. It's not. I haven't hired any less people. I've had higher expectations of what they can do with this technology. No one's working less, at least in my companies. And then the third time frame is really 2029 onward, when we have AGI, and then very soon, shortly thereafter, ASI, artificial superintelligence. And the challenge there is AI could be the single greatest pro-human capability we've ever had. I personally believe, and I'm curious what your thoughts are, that the more intelligent a being is, the more pro-life and the more peaceful and the more pro-abundance it is. All the TV shows where, super advanced aliens come here and destroy us, or Terminator, I call bullshit on that. I think that's ridiculous. I mean, there's no shortage of resources in the universe, as you well know more than anybody. The movie Her, where the AIs get to a particular point where they get bored with humans and then leave to go out and explore, is much more realistic to me. But having said that, I think AIs can help broker peace. I think they can help uplift humanity. What do I mean by that? Why do we have wars? Well, for a number of reasons. But one of them is that people are unhappy with their state of life, that they don't have food, energy, water, healthcare, education, and they have nothing to lose, and they're angry. Imagine a world in which we could uplift every man, woman, and child, where we truly have massive abundance, where everybody has access to everything they need. I think that if you had the best life you could live, and a mom knows that her kids are going to have the best healthcare, the best education, can make their dreams come true, I think the last thing you're going to do is, start going to war and put on a suicide vest. I think you have so much to live for that you would not want to give it up. So I think creating a world of abundance is one of the most important things that we can do. And I think that occurs. I've had this conversation with Elon. He said, we've talked about abundance. It's a theme he's spoken about. He, was a big supporter of my first book there. And he said, absolutely, after AGI. AGI gets us that level of massive abundance. And so the question is, how do we make sure that AI is pro-humanity? And this is another conversation that's going on right now at all the top companies, not enough inside the government, which is this idea of alignment, that as we are building and training our artificial intelligent algorithms, we need to make sure that they are aligned with humanity's best interests. And they're not aligned with radical factions. And the best example comes from a guy who's become a dear friend. He was at Google, helped bring 4 billion people onto the Google platform when he was head of business. His name is Mo Gadot. And Mo wrote a book called Scary Smart. And it's a great book. I commend to everybody. It's a short read, very insightful. And Mo gives the analogy. He says, I want you to imagine that Superman came from Krypton, landed in Kansas, met the Kent family, became a loving, pro-human individual because he was trained that way. But imagine instead that he landed in the Bronx and he was brought up by the mafia or drug lords. Nothing against the Bronx. I was born there. He'd become, instead of a superhero, he would have probably become a supervillain. So the equivalent of Superman landing on Earth is AI. and we are AI's parents. And so how do we raise that AI? How do we inform it? How do we teach it? How do we model for it? Because right now we're modeling all of the insane stuff on the internet. So there needs to be the set of training languages, training data sets that are carefully selected, right? You can send your 9 or 10-year-old to a great school, or you can send it to a terrorist camp, and you'll have a very different outcome from the exact same genome. So this is what we have to think about.
My thumb's rather occupied right now holding up good old Carl Sagan, but yours is free to push that like button. And don't forget to subscribe. It really helps us with the algorithm. Now back to the episode. You and I are both proud parents of twins. And you just mentioned a thought experiment that I'd like to explore in more depth, perhaps, and the way that genetics are not necessarily going to become destiny. And it might be the educational system that really parlays into a child's future success, and making sure that alignment doesn't supersede the role of a parent. I wonder now if you could talk about how has it affected you as a parent? It has affected me, but I already know enough about me. I'm really curious about you. You're one of the most I would say role model, exemplars I look to as someone who's ultra successful, self-made, and just a force for good. But I know above everything, it's your kids that mean most to you in the future. The future is for them. So how has AI impacted your parenting, if at all? And how will it impact their prospects for jobs and employment in an abundant future where nobody has to work?
Yeah. Beautiful question, and probably the most important question for anybody listening who has kids. And yeah, I consider my number one purpose in life is being their dad, and being a good role model and such. So they're 12 now. They're in 6th grade, middle school. I don't think the educational system is preparing them at all for the world they're going to inherit. I did a quick poll on, I'm going to call it Twitter. Sorry, Elon. I did a Twitter poll, and I was asked, if you're a parent, is your middle or high school preparing your kids for the technological future? 3% said yes, 14% said maybe, and 83% absolutely not. And I think people know this, right? Because my kids, how old are your twins again?
They're 5.
5. So definitely for them. Yeah. By the time my kids graduate high school in 6 years, we're going to have AGI. We may have ASI, and they're going to have to learn how to live in a world in which they're in partnership with technology 24/7.
Yes.
We're all going to have a version of Jarvis from Iron Man, which is my favorite analogy. We're all going to have what Microsoft calls a co-pilot, which understands you, enables you, supports you. You think and Google, basically, it understands, as you enter a room, it knows your favorite music and it switches it over. If you're upset about something, it may turn on comedy on the TV to get you to relax. But I remember when my dad didn't want to buy me a calculator because he wanted me to learn the math tables. And I did learn the math tables. I got him to buy me a TI 59. I don't know if you, it was, and I learned how to program on it, which is what I said, Dad, I was going to learn to program on the damn thing. And so I think our kids need to become AI natives. To ignore that is I think ridiculous. And so, but now the question becomes, who do they need to be as people in a world of these superhuman AI capabilities? I think I'm more concerned about creating kids who are empathic, who understand how to make an argument, how to ask great questions. One of my boys last semester had to memorize the state capitals of all 50 states. And I'm like, ugh, no, please. It's like, honestly, that's why God created Google. I don't think I need to occupy your neurons with that. So we're going to have to reinvent what and how we teach our kids. And so I'm thinking about, do I start a new school for them? Or do I partner with Singularity University to create, after school programs and summer programs and so forth? But our educational system is baroque and broken, right? It's like it teaches to the test, and it's not preparing kids for the future, not even close.
Yeah. And kind of segueing from that into education, which is my vocation, but it's also my hobby as well, and learning about it. And you operate a university, Singularity University, and it's really transformative. I mean, you talk to top executives, you see them on LinkedIn. That's always the thing they put that above almost everything except for the Harvard MIT axis that you also represent. But when you think about these exponential technologies, and you mentioned, creating a school, which is not, that's kind of an analog technology to overcome and perhaps, inculcate the natural intelligence rather than, kind of educating humans on what AI can do. And I wonder, are there, kind of applications that either from Singularity University or its alums, or perhaps in that same space, in the education spaces? You and I talked about, several months ago when we did a pod crossover, like, when Laverne and Shirley would go on with Fonzie. You and I remember that, but we did a crossover, and I said, my profession hasn't changed much in 1,000 years since the first university opened in Bologna, Italy in 1080. There's been some sage on a stage, and mostly he, unfortunately, but now more she, took a rock and, scraped on another piece of rock. And there were these, rapt, students in the audience, except they had the power to go on strike, and then the teacher wouldn't get paid. So thankfully tenure got rid of that barbaric practice, Peter. But tell me, I see no, besides your profession, healthcare, or your original profession, and I see almost nothing more ripe for extreme disruption. And no job is safer, it seems, from the perils of AI stealing your job than the academic landscape that I inhabit. So tell me, Peter, what are your thoughts on building a new university? Will we make my job obsolete when you can learn from Feynman and Galileo and Madame Curie? Why learn from Brian Keating? Go ahead, please explain what you think are the opportunities, perils, and pitfalls for education, and then we'll pivot to healthcare at the end.
Well, you should polish up your resume. So listen, let's be clear about what's coming. What is coming is a complete, total revolution in education that is experiential. I'm clear about this, right? The example I used last time, I'll use it again, is if I want to learn about ancient Greece, I can pick up the Odyssey, the Iliad, and try and make heads and tails of it. But in a world in which I can enter a virtual world, which is photorealistic, and that tech is here right now. And there's a guy in a white toga on a slab of marble who calls me over, and it's Socrates or Plato, and he says, "Let's have a conversation. Let me introduce you to my friends. Let's walk around Athens." And I experience it. I'm there. I'm in conversation. I'm asking questions. I'm like being told funny stories, and that is amazing. All right. And there's just no way. I mean, a great teacher can transport you to that moment in time if they are a great orator and storyteller and make it fun, but not mass scale and not personalized. So I think we're within, 3 to 5 years of that being here, definitely within 7 years. So I'm going to be able to learn what I want, when I want, in a hyper-personalized fashion. So the question becomes, we're going to divide education, I think, into two different parts. One part is learning math, learning history, learning science and skills and so forth. Another part is human interaction, being a good leader, and it's the stuff in the real physical world that's going to be important to human capability. Though we're looking at an X Prize right now to teach empathy using VR. So maybe I take that back. Anyway, I am curious. I don't know the answer. I mean, one of the biggest challenges is to help people find their purpose. So we're purpose driven. You and I share that, right? We're very driven to create and to educate and to inspire and to guide and to do all those things. Is there something inherently human that no AI is going to be able to replicate? We're going to find out. We're really going to find out. I don't know. What do you think? Where do you think a decade from now, after we have AGI and ASI, and people, we have the early versions of that with Khan Academy.
Yeah.
And there are great games. And we gamify a lot of things. We don't sufficiently gamify education, right? Yeah. I love the discrepancy. In education, you start with a score of 100%. Every time you get something wrong, you get lower and lower and lower. In video games, you start with a score of 0, and every time you get something right, it goes higher and higher and higher. I mean, that's just broken. What do you think? Where do you think education is going to be when we have artificial superintelligence?
I want to divide it because you've inspired me to break things into epochs, and I want to talk about the epoch of the current status of how education can be optimized, the near term future, and then the post 2029 deep future. Right now, I've been underwhelmed by a lot of the artificially recreated Brian Keatings, that I've tried to do and had them read to my twins bedtime stories in my place. And, they can do an okay job, but really trying to replicate me leaves me wanting, which is kind of surprising, right? Because we've left digital breadcrumbs. You and I was on the internet in 1989. Actually, before that, the bulletin board system. I'm sure you even were.
I remember a bulletin board system. Yes.
Yeah, it was great. Until I ran up, a local phone bill on over $1,000 back in 1986. That almost got me kicked out of the house. But so we've left these digital breadcrumbs for literally 3 to almost 4 decades. There's almost nothing to my mind that sort of knows what Brian Keating knows and what he doesn't know in order to optimize an educational experience for me. And our kids that are digital natives, they will have that opportunity. But I think, there's a tremendous concern about privacy and so forth. When, in reality, Google knows more about you than your priest and rabbi, minister, doctor, lover, right? So we have this preciousness, and we should, because privacy is a human right, as Tim Cook said. And I'm sure you've had discussions.
Yeah, but the question is, does anyone really believe we have privacy?
Yeah. No, I with the sensors and services and
listen, Amazon's in the bedroom. AI. Yeah, Alexa's listening to everything all the time. Right.
I changed Alexa to computer. Computer, who is Peter Diamandis?
Yeah.
This might answer your question. Peter H. Diamandis is an American marketer, engineer, physician, and entrepreneur.
Computer, stop. So what I've done, Peter, is I've connected the C word of back there, my Jarvis,
yes,
to its own power supply. So someday I'm going to see if it'll turn itself off to see if it can actually commit a digital suicide. But in reality, I think there's tremendous. I think my colleagues are so averse. You'd be surprised. We're working on technology that can spot a light bulb on the surface of an exoplanet.
Yeah.
And yet we're not really thinking about how we can utilize this technology to have that, Socrates experience that you just spoke about. And it's a huge opportunity for those that get there first. I'd say for the next 10 years after that, kids, they will grow up and they can kind of, go through it and keep records, because a computer is, your human brain, you taught me this, is not for storing information. It's for creating new information and having imagination. And lastly, I think the deep future, is really impossible to predict. I mean, if you listen to futurists, of any kind of caliber decades ago, it was flying cars and underwater cities and life on other planets. I think it's so risky, and yet they missed the internet. Even though the internet, as you pointed out, was around 1970, so they missed the impact of it. Famous quotes from people like Nobel Prize winner Paul Krugman that the internet's going to be the impact of a fax machine. I think the deep future is very hard to predict. I'm excited to see what Ray, his predictions, how they materialize. But education, I think, is ripe for disruption. And I always say, the professors shouldn't sit on their laurels, but, for now, they've had the opportunity to do that. We only have about 10, 15 minutes left, Peter. So there's so many more questions that I know the audience is going to want to really hear about. None more so, perhaps, than your work in the medical industry, and what types of drug discovery, diagnostics, medical assistance in the waiting room. Eric Topol has written about, doctors nowadays are typing into one computer and then patients are on their cell phone. Talk about the impact of AI specifically. And I urge everybody to subscribe to Peter's newsletter, because I've gotten not only many good subscriptions to many of the products, Peter has presented to me that I otherwise wouldn't have, but also to have the insights from one of the world's foremost experts on medicine and AI. So, Peter, take it away. What can an AI assistant do for us?
Yeah, so I do agree. Education and health are the two areas that AI is going to massively disrupt. And it's sinful, the healthcare system we have today. And I'm on a mission to disrupt and reinvent it. And so that's where I spend all of my time. My venture funds are investing in there. The companies I've started are focused on that. And in the US, we pay a ridiculous amount, and we're like in the, way down a couple of decades on healthcare quality. So what does it mean? We're complicated systems. Our 3.2 billion letters are just the beginning of the complexity. We have 40 trillion cells in our body. Each cell is doing like 1 billion chemical reactions per second. So there's a lot going on. We're quantum systems. I think one of the things I'm excited about is quantum chemistry and quantum computation, giving us new tools to understand, how and why we are physiologically as we are. But here's the biggest thing people need to understand. Your body is really great at masking disease. We compensate really well. What do I mean by that? You don't develop Parkinson's tremor until 70% of the neurons in the substantia nigra are gone. 70% of all heart attacks have no precedent, no shortness of breath, no pain, nothing on a CT scan. The cancers that kill us, 70% of those are not screened for. We screen for breast and prostate and skin, but we don't screen for glioblastoma or pancreatic cancer or other cancers. And if you, God forbid, should have cancer, you don't feel anything in stage 1 or stage 2. It's only when you get to stage 3 or 4 and you go in and the doctor says, "I'm sorry to tell you this, but it's kind of late. We just found this." And we all have people who've gone through that. So I'm saying that because the world has changed, where technology and AI now enables you to know exactly what's going on inside your body. Right? So we're pilots. As I'm flying, I have all my gauges. I know exactly what's going on inside the airplane, right? In my Tesla, I've got all my gauges. I know exactly what's going on in the car. For most of us, we have no idea what's going on inside our body. And until you look, and people say, "I don't want to look." I say, "Bullshit. Of course you want to look. You want to find it at inception and take action." So as an example, one of the companies I serve as executive chairman of, spending half my time in it because I'm so excited about it because it's got the biggest potential impact. It's called Fountain Life. We have 4 centers right now: New York, 2 in Florida, 1 in Dallas. We'll be opening 1 in LA next year. And we have a waiting list of like 40 centers we're building out around the world. You go and we digitize you, full body MRI, brain vasculature, an AI-enabled coronary CT, a DEXA scan, your full genome, your microbiome. It's 150 gigabytes of data. And the reality is no doctor could fathom or handle that much data. But we can now with AI, right? AI can take this data, integrate it, look at your 120 plus biomarkers that are collected from the blood draws, and look at what's going on in the imaging and everything else, and start to create a model of what, if everything's perfect, fantastic. If something's wrong, what's wrong right now? What do we do about it? Or what's likely to happen to you, and how do we prevent that? So this is the era of really preventative medicine, with sensors all the time. And so we've saved hundreds of lives. I have a couple of my friends who their doctor said, don't waste your time and money. And we find cancer in them. We find cancer in 2% of people who think they're perfectly normal. We find aneurysms in 2.5% of people. We find a life-saving finding in 14.4%. At the end of the day, we're all optimists about our health, but we don't actually know what's going on. So the technology to know what's going on and then take action is finally here. This will get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper over time. What I mean is we're going to, the next stage, and Fountain has the vision I'm portraying is Fountain at home. So I'm wearing an Oura ring. I've got my Apple Watch. I have a CGM, continuous glucose monitor, and we're going to have dozens of wearables, consumables, implantables that are measuring everything all the time. And that data is being fed to your AI that is making sure everything's in perfect calibration. And if something is off, it knows about it instantly. And then in the near term, it's going to inform your physician, and it's going to be a pilot co-pilot relationship between the doctor and the medical AI. Eventually, it will be just the AI system. It may modify the meds you're taking, may modify the food it's serving you. But we're going to get into a very rapid closed feedback cycle to optimize your health. And that's the vision of where we're going. Today, it's 17 years on average between a medical discovery and it being available to you in the doctor's office. It's crazy.
Yeah, and drug discovery, and also just having the co-pilot. I mean, right now, I almost feel like in the future we'll look back on AI-free doctor's visits as kind of bloodletting and phrenology and so forth, right?
I'm predicting in 5 years it's going to be malpractice to diagnose a patient without AI in the loop. I'll give you one example. Do you know how many medical journal articles are published per day? I may have asked you this number before. There's 5,000 articles in medical journals per day, right? So the question I laughingly ask is, how many did your doctor read this morning, right? And then can it know for my specific genome and my specific medical upload data, whether there's an article from this morning that has the answer to what I need, right? But that's where we're heading towards, and it's going to be extraordinary.
Yeah, and similarly in the aviation industry, we talked about this last time. Right now, every plane has to dial in by hand and every pilot has to take his eyes off or her eyes off of the windscreen and look down and type into it, and then they have to wait a minute for the weather to be ready. This should all just be in a heads-up display delivered to glasses. They know where you're going, they know where you're landing, they know who you. So I just feel like the impact in saving life, et cetera, is going to be so monumental that you're right. It'll be malpractice in a host of industries, ranging from legal to education, to aviation, to medicine. But Peter, we're coming up on the end of it. I want to ask you just one penultimate question is. I mean, as a person on the human level, as we see what these technologies have always done. I was in Cleveland recently, back at my alma mater, Case Western, and I stayed near the Cleveland Clinic, and I saw some Amish people, and they would get on the elevator with us, and they would ask us to push the button, because they will not make use of technology, I suppose. I'm not familiar with that religion. I know for my religion, Judaism, on Sabbath, on Saturdays, we don't use electricity. I don't work either. But tell me, Peter, are there going to be a class of digital kind of denizens that are left out or non-digital? I can always already see, as I said, 1/7 of my life, I don't use technology.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
what is that going to do? Is it going to bifurcate a class of make a caste system based on digital access to AI?
It will, at the choice of those who choose not to. I think technology is a demonetizing and democratizing force. The better it is, the cheaper it is, and the more available it is. And people may choose a different path of life. Will it eventually cause us to speciate? Maybe. In particular, as we start on down the path of brain-computer interface, right? So there will be those, I would probably include myself, that as soon as I can get a good high bandwidth link to my my neocortex, I'd love to, be as smart as you and understand quantum physics and astronomy at the level you do.
Subscribe to my newsletter, and you will.
And at the end of the day, we're going to be upgrading ourselves. We're going from evolution by natural selection, Darwinism, to evolution by human intelligence, hopefully human direction. And so what does that mean if we can increase our IQ points, increase our connectivity? I think one of the areas that is going to bifurcate humanity is those not who only use AI, but those who merge with AI, right? That's going to be the most interesting element. So if I'm able to think in Google, I'm able to know the intimate thoughts of someone else who's connected through this neocortex BCI system, a level of intimacy like never before. This isn't stuff that, our children's children. This is us. This is the next 20 years. It's going to be awesome.
Indeed. Okay, Peter, this has been a treat. As I said, we could go on for hours. I just love schmoozing with you, and I always learn so much. Last thing is just how people can connect to you and go down the Diamandis rabbit hole, as I did a decade and a half ago. I can't believe it. You've been such a hero of mine. Where can people find you?
So if you go to diamandis.com, you can sign up for my blog. I put out two a tech blog twice a week. One's on longevity and one's on exponential tech. If my podcast is called Moonshots, you can see it behind me over here. There we go. There's that logo. And it's an episode a week, and I'm really focused on talking to people who are taking huge moonshots in the world, as you have been, Brian, and what they learned, where they failed, where they succeeded, and what their advice is to others who want to make a big impact on the planet. xprize.org, we have launched over $300 million in incentive competitions. We're about to launch $250 million of prizes in the next 3 months. Super cool. And then finally, if you're interested in my longevity plans, if you go to diamandis.com/longevity, I have a free, my longevity practices, everything I do and why I do it, all boiled down as a free PDF book that you can get, because taking your health into your own hands is critically important. So anyway, that's my world. A lot else, but we'll keep it there.
I love it. We love you, Peter. Thank you so much for sharing so much of your valuable time with our humble audience. And we'll tune in next time and enjoy the rest of this beautiful fall season here in California, or wherever your travels are taking you around our solar system and beyond. Peter Diamandis, Dr. Peter Diamandis, friend and mentor for many years. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you.